Mental exhaustion is not just about being tired. It's waking up feeling drained. It's carrying the weight of unspoken expectations, unanswered questions, and unresolved pressure. But what if I told you there's a truth, a simple, undeniable truth that can set your mind free? Many people walk through life carrying the emotional weight of those around them. They feel obligated to make others happy, to keep the peace, to solve every problem, even when it's not their responsibility. If someone they care about is upset, they internalize it as their fault. If a friend is distant, they overthink what they did wrong. If a family member is struggling, they feel guilty for not doing more. But the truth is this: you are not responsible for everyone's emotions. And when you finally accept that truth, it can free you from the endless cycle of mental exhaustion that has kept you stuck, anxious, and drained. This mindset often begins early. Many people are raised in environments where they were taught directly or indirectly that love must be earned through compliance, emotional caretaking, or people-pleasing. If your parents were emotionally unpredictable or volatile, you may have learned to suppress your own feelings in order to stabilize theirs. You learned to scan the room, anticipate needs, and adjust your behavior to keep others calm or happy. It becomes a form of survival. But as an adult, this emotional hyper-responsibility doesn't protect you. It slowly destroys your peace. You find yourself constantly trying to manage how others feel, often at the cost of your own well-being. You apologize when you haven't done anything wrong. You say yes when every part of you is screaming no. You absorb other people's moods and frustrations like a sponge, believing that their discomfort is somehow your failure. And worst of all, you begin to measure your worth by how well you can maintain other people's emotional balance. That's not compassion. That's codependency. And that weight will break you if you don't put it down. The truth is, every person is responsible for their own emotions. You can support, you can care, you can be kind, but you cannot control how someone else feels. Their emotions are the result of their perceptions, their experiences, their inner dialogue, not your actions alone. Two people can experience the same situation and have completely different emotional responses. That's because our feelings are ours, not someone else's burden to carry. Letting go of emotional responsibility doesn't make you selfish. It makes you healthy. It allows you to love others from a place of freedom rather than fear. It means offering support without drowning in someone else's storm. It means knowing the difference between empathy and enmeshment. You can be present for someone without absorbing their chaos. You can care deeply and still choose peace. One of the most freeing realizations is that you are not obligated to fix what you didn't break. You don't need to chase people down to make them feel better about your boundaries. You don't have to soften every truth just to avoid uncomfortable reactions. If someone is angry at you for choosing rest, for speaking honestly, or for not meeting their unspoken expectations, that's their emotion to process, not yours. This is where maturity comes in. Holding space for other people's emotions without making them your own. You can listen to someone's frustration without internalizing it. You can witness someone's disappointment without shrieking in shame. You can acknowledge someone's pain without becoming the hero, the fixer, or the scapegoat. That is emotional freedom. Of course, this shift doesn't happen overnight. You'll feel guilt at first. You might question yourself. You may even face pushback from people who have become comfortable with you sacrificing yourself for their comfort. but stay the course. Over time, that guilt transforms into clarity. That fear turns into confidence, and the mental exhaustion begins to lift like fog after a long, dark night. You begin to realize that peace doesn't come from keeping everyone happy. It comes from being honest with yourself. It comes from honoring your emotional limits and refusing to betray yourself just to maintain someone else's illusion of control. You are not cold for protecting your mental health. You are not unkind for choosing emotional honesty over silent suffering. You are simply awake. And awake people don't sleepwalk through life, carrying burdens that don't belong to them. So the next time you feel overwhelmed, anxious, or mentally drained, pause and ask yourself, am I carrying something that isn't mine? If the answer is yes, gently set it down. Breathe. And remind yourself of this unshakable truth. You are not responsible for how everyone feels. You are only responsible for how you show up, with integrity, compassion, and boundary. That's enough. You are enough. And that truth will set your mind free. We live in a world that glorifies hustle and grinds us into exhaustion. We're taught to equate value with busyness, to see rest as something lazy people indulge in, and to believe that if we're not constantly doing something, we're falling behind. That kind of thinking is poison and is one of the greatest lies we've been sold. The truth is, rest is not laziness, it's recovery. And until you embrace this truth, mental exhaustion will continue to wear you down from the inside out. Most people don't realize they're burning out until it's too late. They push through fatigue, override the signals from their body, and drown out their inner voice with noise. Emails, deadlines, social media, and constant obligations. They confuse being constantly busy with being productive. But there's a difference. Productivity is intentional. Busyness is reactionary. One builds your life, the other drains it. What makes it worse is the guilt that comes with slowing down. We've internalized the idea that taking a break is only justifiable if we're physically collapsing. We feel ashamed for watching a movie, taking a nap, or doing absolutely nothing. The moment we try to rest, a voice creeps in. You should be doing more. That voice doesn't come from truth. It comes from fear. Fear of not being enough. Fear of being judged. Fear of falling behind in a race that no one's even watching. But here's the reality. Your body is not a machine. Your mind is not an endless battery. Every system in nature has a rhythm. Seasons of growth and seasons of stillness. Why do we believe we're any different? Trees rest in winter, oceans retreat before waves return. Even the heart pauses between beats. Rest is not a break from progress. It's a vital part of it. Think about the last time you truly rested. Not just sleep, but soul rest. The kind where you didn't check your phone, where you weren't secretly worrying about your to-do list. The kind of rest where your mind exhaled and your spirit could breathe. When was the last time you gave yourself permission to do that without guilt? The truth is, mental exhaustion doesn't always come from doing too much. It comes from never stopping. Constant stimulation, constant pressure, constant self-judgment. It builds up like a weight on your chest, and eventually it crushes your creativity, your patience, your joy, and your health. Real rest isn't just physical, it's emotional and mental too. It's saying no to draining conversations. It's stepping back from toxic expectations. It's logging off, tuning out, and turning inward. It's choosing silence over stimulation and peace over performance. When you begin to see rest as essential, everything changes. You start to make space for clarity. You stop making decisions from a place of fatigue and start operating from a place of wisdom. You begin to listen to your body, not as an obstacle to your goals, but as a sacred partner in achieving them. There's a reason athletes have recovery days. There's a reason high performers schedule solitude. It's not laziness, it's strategy. It's how you stay sharp, resilient, and focused in the long run. You weren't built for burnout. You were built for purpose. And purpose requires energy, not exhaustion. Too many people wait until they're on the edge of collapse before they take rest seriously. They burn out, break down, and then wonder what went wrong. But you don't have to reach the bottom to change direction. You can choose now to treat your mind and body with the respect they deserve. Start by removing the shame around rest. Rest is not a luxury, it's your birthright. It is your body's way of sustaining you, your spirit's way of realigning you, and your mind's way of resetting you. If you never pause, you never process. And if you never process, you never heal. That's how mental clutter builds. That's how emotional burnout begins. So take the nap. Turn off the phone. Cancel the meeting if your soul is screaming for silence. Not because you're giving up, but because you're getting smart. Rest is how you remember who you are when the world demands you be everything else. It's how you reconnect with what matters. It's how you protect the only vessel you'll ever have in this life, you. You don't need to earn your rest. You don't need to explain your pause. You don't need to apologize for honoring your own limits. The people who truly value you will understand. The world will not fall apart if you rest, but your world might if you don't. So let go of the lie that says you're only valuable when you're busy. Let go of the guilt that creeps in when you take care of yourself. And embrace the truth. Rest is not weakness, it's wisdom. Recovery is not retreat, it's reinforcement. The mind that pauses thinks clearer. The heart that slows down loves deeper. The soul that rests rises stronger. And once you start living from that truth, mental exhaustion no longer controls you. You begin to control your life. In today's fast-paced, hyper-productive world, people are constantly chasing deadlines, grinding through to-do lists, and measuring their worth by how much they can accomplish in a day. Everywhere you look, there's pressure to do more, be more, prove more. It's embedded in our culture. The idea that the busier you are, the more valuable you must be. But this belief is quietly destroying lives. It's one of the most dangerous illusions we face. The truth is this. Your worth is not measured by your productivity. And until you embrace this truth, you will stay trapped in a cycle of mental exhaustion, emotional burnout. From a young age, we're conditioned to link achievement with identity. Good grades mean you're a good child. Promotions mean you're a successful adult. If you're productive, you're valuable. If you're not, you feel like a failure. This mindset trains us to chase validation instead of purpose. It tells us we must earn rest, earn approval, even earn love through performance. So we push ourselves past exhaustion. We sacrifice sleep, peace, even our own joy, just to feel like we're enough. But no matter how much you do, it never feels like enough. You finish one task and immediately move on to the next. You hit a milestone, but instead of celebrating, you ask, what's next? You're constantly sprinting through life, trying to outrun a feeling of inadequacy that keeps creeping up on you. That feeling doesn't come from laziness, it comes from a culture that has convinced you that your value is conditional. And here's where the exhaustion really sets in. It's not just physical tiredness. It's mental and emotional depletion from constantly trying to prove yourself. You're not just doing things. You're performing. You're seeking validation through your achievements, hoping that if you just work hard enough, someone will finally say, you're enough. But external validation is a leaky bucket. No matter how much you pour in, it never fills the void inside. The truth is, your value doesn't rise and fall based on your output. You are not a machine designed to produce. You are a human being inherently worthy. Whether you achieve something today or not, your presence has meaning. Your existence matters, even on the days when you do absolutely nothing productive. Think about it. When you love someone deeply, is it because of what they produce, or is it because of who they are? The people who truly care about you don't love you for your achievements. They love you for your authenticity, your presence, your essence. Why is it so hard to offer ourselves the same grace? We have to stop confusing activity with value. Just because you're busy doesn't mean you're growing. Just because you're achieving doesn't mean you're at peace. And just because you're checking boxes doesn't mean you're living a life of purpose. When your self-worth is tied to productivity, rest feels like failure, stillness feels like laziness, and downtime becomes anxiety time. You can't even enjoy a quiet moment without feeling guilty for not doing something useful. But what if usefulness isn't the point? What if being isn't about constantly proving, but simply existing with intention, integrity, and joy? When you separate your worth from your productivity, you begin to live differently. You give yourself permission to rest without guilt. You stop defining your days by what you accomplished and start measuring them by how you felt, how present you were, how aligned you lived. You begin to build a life that serves you, not a life that demands you serve it. And ironically, when you stop obsessing over doing more, you actually begin to do better. You create from a place of peace instead of panic. You work from alignment instead of anxiety. You live with clarity instead of chaos. You stop performing and start living. The shift isn't easy. It requires unlearning years of conditioning. It means disappointing people who expect you to be constantly available, endlessly productive, always on. But the price of constantly pleasing others is losing yourself. And nothing, no job, no goal, no accolade, is worth that. You don't need to earn your place in the world. You already have it. You don't need to prove your worth. It's already within you. Your value is not in your resume, your bank account, your GPA, your productivity tracker, or the number of followers you have. Your value is in your humanity, in your ability to breathe, to love, to grow, to connect, to be still and alive in this moment. So the next time you find yourself measuring your worth by your output, pause, take a deep breath, and remind yourself of this truth. Even if I did nothing today, I'm still worthy. Even if I rest, I'm still valuable. Even if I stop, I'm still enough. Mental exhaustion begins to fade the moment you stop tying your identity to what you can produce and start rooting it in who you truly are. Not a machine, not a trophy, not a performance. There comes a time in every person's life when they feel pulled in too many directions, overcommitted, overwhelmed, and emotionally depleted. And often the root of that exhaustion isn't simply having too much to do. It's not having clear boundaries. Boundaries are not walls meant to push people away. They are bridges that protect your peace, preserve your energy, and allow you to show up in life from a place of strength instead of survival. The truth is this: setting boundaries is not selfish. It is an act of self-respect. And until you truly understand and embrace that, mental exhaustion will remain a constant companion. Many people hesitate to set boundaries because they're afraid of how others will respond. They fear being seen as rude, cold, or uncaring. They fear rejection, judgment, or disappointing someone they love. So they say yes when they want to say no. They stay silent when they're hurting. They tolerate behavior that drains them, all in the name of keeping the peace. But that kind of peace is an illusion, because you cannot maintain outer harmony by sacrificing your inner world. Every time you betray your own needs just to avoid conflict, you slowly chip away at your self-worth. You begin to feel resentful, anxious, even bitter, not because others are intentionally hurting you, but because you've allowed your energy to be used without consent. Boundaries are how you teach others how to treat you. And more importantly, they're how you teach yourself what you're willing to accept in your life. Some people will test your boundaries, not because they don't care, but because they've gotten used to a version of you that always says yes, the version that overextends, overworks, overpleases. And when you begin to change, when you start protecting your time, your space, your mental health, it may disrupt the dynamic, but that discomfort is necessary. Growth always comes with resistance. And you have to be willing to disappoint others in order to stop disappointing. Boundaries are not about control. They're not about manipulating others or forcing people to behave a certain way. They are about clarity, being honest about what you need to function well mentally, emotionally, and physically. A boundary can be as simple as saying, I'm not available right now, or I don't have the capacity for this conversation, or I need time to think before responding. These aren't declarations of war. They're declarations of dignity. Think of your mental energy like a bank account. Every time you say yes to something you don't have space for, you're making a withdrawal. Every time you ignore your own needs, you're writing a check you can't cash. Eventually, you hit zero, and you start running on emotional overdraft. That's when burnout sets in. That's when anxiety skyrockets. That's when your body begins to break down and your mind begins to spiral. Boundaries are how you protect your battles. They're how you ensure that you don't spend your life in emotional debt. And here's what most people don't realize. Boundaries don't just protect you from others, they also protect you from yourself, from your habits of overcommitting, overworking, and overcaring, from your tendency to fix, to rescue, to absorb everyone else's pain. They help you say, I am responsible for me, and you are responsible for you. That separation is where true freedom begins. Many people assume that love means sacrifice without limits. But real love, healthy, mature love, respects boundaries. It doesn't guilt-trip you for taking space. It doesn't punish you for saying no. It doesn't expect you to be everything all the time for everyone. If someone makes you feel bad for setting a boundary, that's a sign that they've benefited from your lack of one. But that is not your problem to fix. What you must understand is that your mental peace is priceless. You are not put on this earth to be everyone's emotional dumping ground, everyone's go-to fixer, or everyone's backup plan. You are allowed to take up space. You are allowed to say, this doesn't work for me. You are allowed to walk away from people or situations that consistently drain you. That's not cruelty, that's clarity. And clarity is what sets your soul free. Boundaries won't always be met with applause. Some people will leave, some will protest. But the right people, those who truly care for your well-being, will adjust. They will respect your limits. They will grow with you, and more importantly, you will grow. Because every time you set a boundary, you send a message to yourself. I matter. My needs matter. My energy is sacred. And from that place of respect, everything begins to change. Your relationships deepen. Your confidence grows. Your anxiety fades. And the mental exhaustion that once haunted you starts to lose its power. Because you are no longer living at the mercy of other people's expectations. You are finally living for a place of alignment, balance, and peace. So don't wait for permission to protect your peace. Don't wait for a breakdown to start setting boundaries. Your mind, your soul, and your future deserve better. Boundaries are not a barrier to connection. They are the foundation of a healthy one. And when you honor them, you honor yourself. That is where real freedom begins. We live in a world obsessed with noise. From the moment we wake up, we're bombarded with information. Notifications, emails, advertisements, opinions, updates. Silence has become so rare, it almost feels uncomfortable. But in that discomfort lies truth. One of the most powerful and freeing truths you'll ever learn is this. You don't have to respond to everything. Not every comment needs a reply. Not every insult needs a defense. Not every situation requires your energy. And the moment you understand this, you begin to protect your mind from unnecessary stress, drama, and exhaustion. Mental exhaustion often doesn't come from doing too much. It comes from reacting too much. Constantly being in a state of response. Trying to explain, justify, clarify, or prove yourself drains your emotional battery faster than anything else. Every time you react to a petty insult or a passive-aggressive comment, you give away your peace. Every time you argue to convince someone who has already made up their mind, you waste time and energy that could have been used for something meaningful. Silence is not weakness, it's wisdom. It's the strength to know what's worth your energy and what isn't. Some people thrive on provoking others. They toss words like darts, hoping you'll flinch. They don't seek understanding, they seek a reaction. And when you give it to them, they win. But when you stay calm, when you choose silence over defense, when you let their words fall flat on the floor, you take back control. You don't owe anyone a reaction just because they want one. Your peace is not a prize to be handed out in argument. It's a treasure to be guarded. People will misunderstand you. They'll misjudge you. They'll twist your words and question your intentions. But here's the truth. Your worth isn't determined by someone else's perception. You do not exist to be understood by everyone. You exist to live with integrity, and that means being okay with not always explaining yourself. You don't have to defend your boundaries. You don't have to argue about your values. You don't have to respond to ignorance with education every single time. Sometimes silence speaks louder than any explanation. Every time you choose silence over reaction, you create space. Space to breathe. Space to think. Space to choose your response instead of giving in to emotional impulse. That space is where maturity lives. That space is where peace grows. That space is where you reclaim power. Not power over others, but power over yourself. There is a kind of dignity in restraint. In knowing you could respond, but choosing not to. It's not about avoiding conflict out of fear. It's about recognizing that not all battles are worth fighting. That not every hill is worth dying on. That sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk away, not in defeat, but in confidence that you don't need to lower yourself to be heard. Social media especially has trained us to feel like we must always have a response to every opinion, every comment, every challenge. But the truth is, silence isn't empty. It's full of power. It's full of intention. When you choose not to respond, you're choosing peace over pride. You're choosing focus over distraction. You're choosing to protect your mental energy for the things that truly matter. There's a story about a monk who carried water from a stream every day. One day someone ridiculed him, mocked his slow walk, and questioned why he didn't find a better way to carry water. The monk smiled, said nothing, and continued his walk. The onlooker shouted louder, hoping for a response, but the monk's silence was louder than any words. It said, "I know my purpose. I don't need your approval." That's the kind of inner strength silence gives you. Not everything needs a response, especially from someone who values their mental peace. When you begin to embrace this, you'll find that your stress level drops. You'll no longer feel the need to jump into every argument, clarify every misunderstanding, or prove your point in every conversation. You'll learn to observe instead of react. You'll learn to pause, to wait, to choose. That's emotional discipline. That's strength. Choosing not to respond isn't passive. It's active self-protection. It's drawing a line that says, my energy is too valuable for this. That doesn't mean you let people walk over you. It means you respond when it's necessary, not when it's expected. You take your power back by not letting every external trigger control your inner state. As you grow, you'll see that silence is often your best response. To nonsense, to provocation, to drama, to manipulation. Because silence shows you're not desperate to be understood. You're secure enough to know that truth doesn't always need to be shouted. That real power doesn't come from reacting, it comes from rising above. So the next time someone tries to pull you into unnecessary drama, remember this. You don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. Protect your peace. Guard your energy. And let silence be the wall between you and the chaos. That's how you win, not by fighting every battle, but by knowing which ones are even worth stepping onto the field. The truth is simple and liberating. You don't have to respond to everything. And once that truth settles into your soul, the mental exhaustion you've carried for so long will begin to lift. Because you'll finally understand that not reacting is not retreating. One of the most overlooked yet deeply liberating truths in life is this: you are not responsible for everyone else's happiness. It sounds simple, but for many this realization comes only after years, sometimes decades, of burnout, anxiety, and emotional fatigue. We are taught from a young age to be kind, considerate, and helpful. But somewhere along the way, many of us absorb a dangerous lie that we must make everyone around us happy, and that their emotions are a direct reflection of our actions or failures. This belief becomes a silent weight that drains your mental energy day after day. But when you understand the difference between support and responsibility, a door to mental freedom opens wide. You are not here to fix everyone. You are not here to absorb everyone's pain. You are not a solution to every problem or the glue holding every broken piece together. Yet so many people take on the emotional weight of others, constantly trying to make things right, to say the perfect thing. To prevent disappointment, they walk on eggshells, bending themselves into shapes they were never meant to be, just to avoid conflict or ensure others are satisfied. But in doing so, they forget themselves. They silence their own needs. They lose touch with their own joy. Mental exhaustion often arises not just from what we do, but from what we feel responsible for. And if you believe it's your job to manage everyone else's emotions, you'll spend your life feeling like a failure. Because people's emotions are unpredictable, complex, and often have nothing to do with you. Someone may be upset because of their past, their expectations, their fears, not because of anything you said or did. And yet, you carry the guilt like it's yours to bear. Letting go of this false responsibility doesn't make you cold or unkind. It makes you whole. It means understanding where your power ends and where someone else's begins. You can support someone without carrying them. You can listen without fixing. You can love someone without losing yourself in their storm. That's healthy love. That's emotional maturity. It's also important to recognize that constantly trying to make others happy can lead to emotional manipulation, where people unconsciously or consciously rely on your need to please them in order to control you. You might find yourself constantly saying yes when you mean no, agreeing to things that drain you, or feeling responsible for someone's anger, sadness, or disappointment. This is a recipe for burnout. Over time, you will feel like you're living for everyone else, like you're a puppet, pulled by 1,000 invisible strings. And the heartbreaking part? Many people who carry this burden are deeply empathetic. They care deeply, feel deeply, and want to help. But empathy without boundaries becomes self-destruction. You must learn to hold space for others without absorbing them. You must learn that your compassion is a gift, not a leash. It's okay to care, it's okay to support, but it is not your job to fix people. People have to take responsibility for their own healing, their own choices, their own happiness. This truth also applies in families, friendships, and relationships. Maybe you've been the emotional caretaker for years, the one everyone calls when they're upset, the one who smooths things over, the one who holds everything together. But at what cost? Who holds you? Who do you get to be when you're not fixing others? Sometimes the greatest act of love you can give is allowing someone to face the consequences of their own decision, not to punish them, but to free yourself. You are allowed to say, I can't help with this right now. You are allowed to step back without guilt. You are allowed to prioritize your peace over someone else's comfort. That's not selfish. That's sanity. That's how you stay mentally and emotionally available long term, rather than burning out from constantly giving what you don't have. And here's the irony. The more you try to manage everyone else's happiness, the more disconnected you become from your own. You forget what brings you joy. You forget what makes you come alive. You become a mirror for others, constantly reflecting their needs, moods, and expectations, until you look in that mirror and no longer recognize yourself. Reclaiming your energy begins with drawing the line. It begins with understanding I am not responsible for how others feel. I am responsible for how I show up, with honesty, kindness, and boundaries. What people do with that is their responsibility, not yours. You can be kind and still say no. You can be loving and still choose yourself. You can be generous without being drained. When you stop trying to make everyone else happy, you make space for your own peace to grow. You stop living reactively and start living intentionally. You stop carrying burdens that were never yours, and finally begin to feel light again, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. This truth will not make everyone happy. Some people may be disappointed. Some may accuse you of changing. Let them. Because the version of you who lived for everyone else's happiness was never free. But the version of you who stands in truth, who honors their limits, who chooses peace over pressure, that version is finally alive. Let go. Let others feel what they need to feel. Let yourself rest. Let yourself be free. Because you were never meant to be everyone's savior. You were meant to be you, whole, peaceful, and enough.